La noche se acabó, pero tengo otra vez contigo. Le doy gracias a Dios, siempre pasándolo contigo en la playa, devorarte como el sol de la mañana, viajando todo el día sin drama, solo tú y yo. Un día bonito lleno de alcohol, tomar un shot por ti, un shot para mí, un shot. Un día bonito lleno de alcohol, tomar un shot por ti, un shot para mí, un shot. Siempre lo pasamos bien lindo, lindo. Un verano contigo lindo, lindo. Ey. Me fui de vacaciones, baby, me perdí, buscando el sabor que encontré en ti. Canela con dolor de Bacardi, lo sentí, baby, me tiene desenfocado, viendo doble, bien borracho, demasiado jodido contigo. Pasándolo contigo en la playa, devorarte como el sol de la mañana, viajando todo el día sin drama, tú y yo. Un día bonito lleno de alcohol, tomar un shot por ti, un shot para mí, un shot. Un día bonito lleno de alcohol, tomar un shot por ti, un shot para mí, un shot. Un día bonito, bonito, un día bonito, bonito. Pasándolo contigo en la playa, devorarte como el sol de la mañana, viajando todo el día sin drama, solo tú y yo. Un día bonito lleno de alcohol, tomar un shot por ti, un shot para mí, un shot. Un día bonito lleno de alcohol, tomar un shot por ti, un shot para mí, un shot. Un día bonito lleno de alcohol, tomar un shot por ti, un shot para mí, un shot.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Friday podcast. Yeah, what can I say? Not the best news today. But I guess in many ways it was expected. It's just like wow. So in this podcast, I am only going to read Harry's statement and also we will listen to his BBC interview and I will give commentary on it. Um, and then if I have the energy, and I really hope I do, I wanted to do another podcast right after this of all the stuff that I've missed. Because I have been away for quite a few days. So let's just start by reading out Harry's statement, and then we will go through the audio. Mods, appreciate you for being here. Please be on the lookout because it's usually on days like this that trolls come in. I've already seen them. They've really amped up on my Instagram. I haven't really had a moment to like start deleting things. So yeah, just please keep an eye. So let's start with Harry's statement. Actually, just give me like 2 minutes. Somebody just messaged me something really important, and I really do actually need to respond to this. So just give me 2 minutes, and then we will get straight to reading the statement and also Harry's listen to Harry's BBC interview. Okay, so let's start with Harry Styles. Let's just get straight into it, folks. Don't even know what to say about this nonsense because this all just looks ridiculous on the Unroyal Mafia, and that's what we're calling them now. The Unroyal Mafia. It's a disgrace. Let me get this on my screen. So he posted this on Sussex.com right after the BBC interview. Let me also just say, checkmate to Harry for literally having a journalist in his house ready to give this interview. These people are playing checkers with Harry, who is playing chess. So bravo to Harry for being this smart. I mean, he's proven how smart he is so far and continues to. So he says, I want to start by thanking my legal team and the Court of Appeal judges for their time and expertise in unravelling this issue that stemmed from the previous government, i.e., the Tory government, now the Labour government. Now, let me also just say, when Diana's accident with a small a happened, because we now have to seriously question, as if we haven't been questioning it all this time, whether or not it was really an accident. When that happened, there was a Labour government in power. Tony Blair was the Prime Minister. Tony Blair, who in reflection was very much just a Tory in sheep's clothing. And now we have Keir Starmer in power, who's very much a Tory in sheep's clothing. This process has ever been about ensuring my safety and that of my immediate family when we are in the United Kingdom, so that we may safely visit my home country with the same level of security that other governments deem necessary for our protection. Now, mind you, while this specifically focuses on security in the UK, the vitriol that the tabloid press have encouraged puts Harry and his family at danger wherever they are. My ask has been simple, that the standard protocols for security and risk assessment be applied to me in the same way they are to others, including people who have never carried out any public functions on behalf of the state. The court ruling confirms that the Executive Committee for the Protection of Royal and Public Figures, known as RAVEC, and comprised of senior officials from the Royal Household, Home Office, and Metropolitan Police, has failed to follow its own mandated process for me, which are applied to applied to all high risk and high profile individuals. This is another reason why, even if Harry had won this case, he still can't trust these people. I think it was just as much about finding out the truth, not just about his situation, but I think by extension his mother's, and getting names of people and having this on record, as it was about, just him getting security, because even if he did, they can't be trusted, period. Given my profound concerns over this issue, I will be writing to the Home Secretary to ask her to urgently examine the matter and review the Ravak process. This legal action has been a last resort, but one that has uncovered shocking truths, starting with the fact that the royal household are key decision makers on Ravak and my sole representation for matters regarding my safety. In this process, I've also learned the names of all those involved, many of whom retired immediately after playing their part. So remember when we know that Sir Clive Alderton, whatever, is one of them, but there was the other one who randomly resigned recently. Also, resigned. Now he stepped down. Now that could have possibly been linked to this as well. In November 2017. Oh, and it's also just so obvious that Charles also played a part in this. In November 2017, before the royal household's role on Ravak was known, this secretive committee concluded that when my wife would join the royal family, she would not receive protection. Let me read that again. On November 2017, before the royal household's role on Ravak was known, this secretive committee concluded that my wife when my wife would join the royal family, she would not receive protection. So they decided pretty much as soon as Harry and Meghan started dating, that she wouldn't get protection. Only when I asked for the name of the person willing to carry that risk did they reverse the decision. So when he wanted the name, they reversed the decision. In 2020, Ravak refused for the first time to conduct the required annual risk, threat, and impact assessment that their own policies demand. The intention of this assessment is to be objective and free from bias and interference to confirm security required. The result was stripping me of the protection I've had since birth, while signaling to all other governments to do the same. Mind you, in other countries, they have given Harry and Meghan protection. You know why? Because they're not stupid. They're not about to play games and have someone, a member of the royal family, have something happen to them on their soil. They're not about to do that. Why would any government want that? The result was stripping me of protection I've had since birth, while signaling to all other governments to do the same. This reckless action knowingly put me and my family in harm's way. Life is precious and I understand the fragility of it. Throughout 2020 and 2021, I attempted to resolve this issue privately, even offering to independently cover the costs of necessary and effective police protection in order to keep me and my family safe. No one responded directly to me about my offer when I made it, and even though I challenged the refusal to let me pay, my legal claim failed. I watched the BBC interview and I don't think he actually mentions this part, which is a bit irritating, because this is another thing that people keep missing, that Harry actually offered to pay, and the figures of the costs of security are greatly overinflated. To this present day, the royal household remains my sole representation on Ravak for every visit and could call for this assessment to be done at any point. The only possible conclusion can be drawn is they choose not to because they know the outcome would prove that my security should never have been removed in the first place. In recent years, my family and I have been subjected to well-documented neo-Nazi and extremist threats, including from Al-Qaeda. There are individuals in prison on UK soil because of such threats, and yet since 2019, a proper risk assessment has not been conducted. This is not only a deviation from standard practice, it's a dereliction of duty. The stark difference is I was born into lifelong circumstances that create inherent security risks. My decade of military service, particularly my 2 tours of Afghanistan, as well as social and tabloid media frenzy, have only intensified those threats. Uncovering how my immediate family safety was knowingly put at risk, as well as who was behind it and who sanctioned it, has been truly devastating. No matter where we may agree or disagree, I would never wish harm on anyone. These legal proceedings have revealed to me that this basic duty of care was not and is not applied to me. It's true that I have been treated as an exemption on this issue. The conditions of my security were not made based on threat risk and impact. They were made based on my role, one that my wife and I wanted to maintain, but was ultimately refused. Ravak's ability to make decisions outside of its own policies and the so called political sensitivities of my case have prevailed over the need for fair and consistent decision making. The court has decided to defer to this, revealing a sad truth. My hands are tied in seeking legal recourse against the establishment. This all comes from the same institution that preyed upon my mother, that openly campaigned for the removal of our security, and that continue to incite hatred towards me, my wife, even our children, while at the same time protecting the very power that they should be holding accountable. The UK is my birthplace and will always be part of who I am. It is a place I love and the country where my son was born. I've only ever wanted to continue my charitable work in supporting the causes and people that mean so much to me and for my children to know the beauty of my homeland. I remain committed to a life of public service. This has been and will always be my life's work, and when you strip away the noise, you'll be able to hear all I've been asking for is safety. Um, I'm not even gonna mince my words. I'm not even gonna mince my words. Everything that they wish on Harry and Meghan, I hope happens to them. Because this is a this is just a different level of evil. The fact that it's so unnecessary as well. Is it because they underestimate the impact of anything happening to Harry and Meghan would have, or they just know in the end that I guess a lot of people in the UK are just kind of spineless and, well, ultimately, what's the worst people would do? I think maybe that's the place that they're operating from. You'll have the same tears you had, maybe a little bit more when it happened to Diana, and then they're just hoping people will forget and move on. Because I'm just trying to figure out how they're getting the confidence to do this in plain sight. Like someone in the comments help me out. Like if you think I'm doing too much, feel free to say so and give your input, because I'm confused. I'm also confused at the government, why they wouldn't step in. Why would you potentially want something happening under um when you're in power? Why would you want this headache? You could make it go away very quickly. Um okay, let's listen to the BBC interview, because Harry said a lot. He said some pretty interesting things, actually. Stuff I wasn't expecting him to say. Roseanne, Harry needs to look at the bright side. His children will be kept away from that disgusting set of people. They won't miss anything from them. Indeed. But it is just to know and have it in black and white now that they so obviously want something to happen to this man and his children and his wife especially. Lady, I thought Harry would win this case, but for some reason I am not surprised. Well, Charles literally went to the court, didn't he? I think somebody mentioned this in the comment section. It was almost to like send a message. Or Harry can now feel justified. Keep your family away, bro. Keep your family away. I guess this means Meghan's definitely not attending Invictus. I hope she doesn't. Invictus can go on. Sad. I know she'd want to support her husband, but it's just too dangerous. All right, this is a half-an-hour interview. I've got the audio here. So let's listen.
Well,
oh, and I will stop it to make commentary as it goes along.
To BBC News. Now, in an exclusive interview with BBC News, Prince Harry has said he is devastated about losing his latest legal challenge over the security he receives when he's in the UK. The Duke of Sussex's taxpayer-funded protection was downgraded back in 2020 after he stopped being a working royal. Well, he appealed, arguing he was singled out for different, unjustified and inferior treatment. But 3 judges at the Court of Appeal today rejected that appeal. Well, now, following that judgment, he's told the BBC that it is currently impossible for him and his family to return to the UK. He's also said that because of the current situation, his father, the King, isn't speaking to him. Well, Prince Harry is currently living in California, where he's been speaking to our correspondent Neda Tawfik, and we can bring you that extended interview now.
But obviously pretty gutted about the decision. We thought it was going to go our way, but it certainly has proven that there was no way to win this through the courts. Wish someone had told me that beforehand. Yeah, the decision has been a surprise as well as not a surprise. Yeah, for the time being, it's impossible for me to take my family back to the UK safely.
You're obviously very deeply affected by this. What memories, experiences had you hoped your children, Archie and Lilibet, would have had that you think they won't be able to now with this decision?
Well, for a start, the only time that I've come back to the UK is sadly for funerals or court cases, with the odd charitable function where I can in between that. I put myself at risk for that, but I will continue on with a life of public service, so I will always support the charities and the people that mean so much to me. I can't see a world in which I would be bringing my wife and children back to the UK at this point.
So they're definitely not coming to Invictus. Definitely not coming to Invictus in Birmingham. And now I'm questioning even more why Birmingham was even considered. For those of you that don't know, Birmingham has been having issues with bankruptcy. You got parts of the country where the trash isn't even being picked up. Is it too late to move it somewhere else? Okay, I know the other options were New York and Washington, and with what's going on in the US, it's best for it not to be held there either. But surely someone somewhere will take the Invictus Games. Because why even have it in the UK at this point?
And the things that they're going to miss is, well, everything. You know, I love my country. I always have done, despite what some people in that country have done. So, you know, I miss the UK. I miss parts of the UK, of course I do. And I think that it's really quite sad that I won't be able to show, you know, my children my homeland. You know.
And as you say, you've gone back several times during this years-long battle. What about the security?
You know, I think about the fact that right now Archie and Lily are children, so they're likely just very unaware of a lot of what's going on. But they're going to be aware one day. And just imagine when they look back and they see the way their family members behaved, the press behaved, the government behaved, the randos online behaved. Devastating.
You've gone back several times during this years-long battle. What about the security arrangements that were in place made you feel it would be unsafe for you and your family?
There's only so much that I can say because of the redaction process and the national security matters at hand. But
And this is another thing. This is actually a national security matter. You know, you can't have a situation where crazies can feel that they can use a royal as collateral, or attack a very prominent figure from the UK. You can't have crazies thinking that.
Because in beginning of 2020, I was scored the highest as far as risk was concerned, and then overnight I was reduced to the lowest without actually going through the risk management board. So one does question how that is even possible, and also the motive behind that at the time. And that was in 2020. And as hard as it is to appreciate or understand why the decision was made the way that it was in 2020, the hardest thing for me has been the fix of that decision for the last 5 years. The fact that I still haven't had a risk management board assessment done for me over the last 5 years. Everybody else within this group of people get it at the minimum once a year. So again, I would not have taken this far if I didn't have compelling evidence of facts that reveal why the decision was made. And I'm sitting here today talking to you where, you know, we've lost the appeal, but the other side have won in keeping me unsafe. So again, there's a lot of question marks that a lot of people will have.
And who is the other side? Who is the other side? Who makes up the other side?
The legal process, I've uncovered my worst fears. And to now know today, based on this judgment, that there was no legal framework that constrains the decisions of this body, RAVEC, of which the royal household sit on. And I didn't know that until this legal process in 2021. One of the first things my lawyer said to me was, as disclosure started, or as this process started, she turned around and said, "Did you know that the royal household sat on RAVEC?" And my jaw hit the floor.
Well, I want to ask you about that because the King's private secretary sits on RAVEC now.
Sir Clive Alderton, yeah.
Do you wish
And another person as well, but yes.
Do you wish your father had intervened, despite how that may have looked?
I've never asked him to intervene. I've asked him to step out of the way and let the experts do their job. This RAVEC committee is an expert committee full of professionals, plus the royal household. And the royal household don't have any role in that, on the RAVEC committee, other than the helping influence the decisions based on members of the royal family. And 5 years later, every single visit that I do back to the UK has to go through the royal household. My representative on the RAVEC committee, still to this day, is the royal household. That is not a decision that I choose. I am forced to go through the royal household and accept that they are putting my best interests forward during these conversations and the deliberations. So no, I haven't asked my father to intervene. The whole point of a risk management board, which, as I said, everybody else gets, but I haven't, never been given since back end of 2019 was the last one that I was given. The whole point of that is to have a board and a risk assessment, a separate board from RAVEC, that considers all of the facts and all the circumstances. It is a system and an assessment that is designed to be non-biased and to avoid interference. What I know throughout this legal process is the interference that was created came from the royal household. And the RAVEC chair at the time, who I believe I can talk about because he's no longer there, Sir Richard Mottram, the first thing he did, or the first people that he went to go and see, was the royal household at the palace. So whether it's the media or whether it's anybody else that claims that the royal household and my father and my family don't have any decision-making capabilities on Ravek, well, then what's their role? They're not experts.
Exactly. Like, it shouldn't even be a discussion as to whether or not the royal household have some control over this. Of course they do, because Andrew has security.
What's their role? They're not experts. What's their role on that? And Sir Richard Mottram emailed back in January of 2020 that an RMB would be necessary before taking my security away. After his visit to the palace, that RMB that was planned was abandoned in favour of alternative governance measures.
What the court decided today was that they were justified for 4 reasons to not have that review. And a major part of that is because you're no longer a working royal, a change in your status. Do you not accept that from the court?
Well, my status hasn't changed. It can't change. I am who I am. I am part of what I'm part of, and I can never escape that. My circumstances will always be the same. But with a specific answer to the question, there are comparisons that exist. And again, I have to be careful what I say, but I think it would be quite shocking for the British public and the public at large to understand or know that, in fact, many people do know this, that people who leave public office receive lifetime protection, regardless of whether there are threats or risks to them. So for me...
Of course they would, because there will likely always be a threat or risk to them just by being in public office.
With a whole list of risks and threats that were known about in 2020 and that have only increased over time, including the Al-Qaeda threat that was published and talked about recently, completely disregarded, thrown away, ignored, because for me, security was made conditional on having that official role. That role that everybody knows, that myself and my wife wished to carry on, but was stopped from being able to do that back in 2020.
What do you say to those who ask, why should the taxpayer pay for your police security if you have your own private security? Where are the gaps there? What's your response to those who say you're getting police protection on a case-by-case basis?
I tell you what, why don't you ask that question again, but in 3 parts, if you could? Because you just put 3 very, very important questions together.
Sure.
And I cannot possibly answer all 3 of them at the same time.
Sure. What do you say to those who ask why the UK taxpayer should pay for police security? You have your own private security.
Well, first off, private security can only do so much. Again, I can't go into the details of that, but I think most people will be able to work that out. One of the major things is they don't have jurisdiction in a foreign country, or in any country. They don't have any jurisdiction. Police protection is effective protection, which is what my grandmother made very clear that we needed.
And it's good that he confirms that the Queen actually said that they needed protection. Just so there's no about that. Because we know that these people like to rewrite history, and yes, I definitely have my opinions about Lizzie, but that at least she made very clear. Because if anything, I think that Harry's grandmother saw the bigger picture in the way that the other green-eyed monsters in the Royal Institution just could not. They saw she saw the value that Harry and Meghan could bring to continue to extend her institution, which in the end is what it's about. And it would have had a chance to continue had they seen that also. But right now, they're digging their own grave, thinking that they're digging a grave for Harry and Meghan. They're digging their own.
With regard to the taxpayer part of it, I don't need to go into detail how much the royal family costs or how much protection costs or whatever. What I will say is that some of the British tabloid press did a very good job in campaigning to have our security removed by quoting figures such as £20 million. Right, and through this disclosure process, I've seen constituents in the UK write to their MP saying, I don't want to, as a taxpayer, I don't want to pay for Meghan and Harry's security at this cost. They're literally quoting headlines from British newspapers. Those figures are obviously grossly exaggerated by about 18, 19 times. And further to that, if you know that other people are being protected, people that have made a choice for public office, then why wouldn't you be comfortable, happy with someone in my position who's given 35 years service to his country, 2 tours of Afghanistan, and the threats and risks to my life? I was born into this position. I was born into those risks, and they've only increased over time.
Yeah, he was born into this position. At the end of the day, if you want a monarchy, well, you don't just get to, pick and choose who gets what protections under that system. You don't get to pick and choose. Oh, this person can get treated this way, but this person has to be treated differently. Otherwise, just abolish the whole monarchy. Harry and his wife differently from everybody else.
Into those risks, and they've only increased over time, along with my marriage to Meghan, and the frenzy across media, mainstream media and social media that created. So, and I guess on top of that as well, probably what people don't know, but that is mentioned in the judgment today, Ravek protect private citizens. I was made a private citizen by the royal household, not by Ravek, by the royal household. I can't be a private citizen. I will never be seen as a private citizen. I will never be treated as a private citizen.
This is actually quite interesting because I didn't know this. I knew about, obviously, people in public office and officials being given lifelong security. I mean, that's just a given. But I didn't know that they also protect private citizens. Now I'm trying to think who would actually come under that. If anybody would be able to comment who they think he'd be referring to. Maybe people under witness protection, perhaps.
I will never be treated as a private citizen, not by the media, not by most people, and certainly not by anybody that wants to harm me or my wife or our kids. So I think once people realize or understand that there are private citizens who have never played any role in public office and never will play any public role, that because they are high risk, they are protected at taxpayers' expense, and rightly so, because it will affect not only with that person, could they end up in hospital or worse on UK soil, but it comes down to impact, and it comes down to the reputational impact of the UK if that person or those people are injured.
Yeah, the reputation which is damaged in many ways anyway. And will be damaged even further if you end up with a Diana Part 2. This is why I'm saying the government is being stupid.
Difference between the top level security you say you should have and the security you are given on this case-by-case basis when you go
so
to
the details of the security I can't talk about. All I will say is that the last R&B assessment that I was given, I scored the highest. The only person within the family that scored anywhere near that was my grandmother. Overnight, I was reduced to the lowest. This case-by-case basis has been used by Ravek and also by large sections of the British press to say, well, what's the big problem? You're given something on a case-by-case basis. Unfortunately, that case-by-case basis is separated by the reason for my visit. Sorry, just to give you more context on that. it's not really a case-by-case basis. It's an either or. If you're invited to the UK by your family, then we will give you security. If you come for any other reason, then you will get a very low amount of security. I'm not going to.
And there you have it. And do you think that unroyal mafia of a family are going to invite Harry for anything? Harry, who wasn't even invited, according to him and Spare, to William and Kate's house on a regular basis when they lived on the same palace grounds. I mean, these people didn't even really want to see Harry's son when they still lived in the UK. They want control over Harry's movements, and they want to be able to outmaneuver him.
A very low amount of security. I'm not going to confirm what that is, but it is completely insufficient. Somewhere along the line, people have talked about the fact that it really, all it is someone on the end of a phone. So, you know, no matter how much private security I have around me, there's only so much that I can do and operate and function within the UK when it comes to supporting my charities, visiting my friends, all of these things. So, you know, I've been treated very, very, very differently to everybody else that exists. All examples that exist, past, present, I have been singled out.
You've spoken very openly about the fact that you think you've been punished for leaving the monarchy. Who specifically do you think is trying to punish you?
I don't.
Yeah, and this is cult behavior. This is literal cult behavior. Thank you for whoever bought me a coffee. You didn't put your name there, but I saw your message. They isolate you. They try to take away your resources or limit your resources. They were basically trying to make Meghan go broke by not providing her with anything. Pulling their security meant that they had to hire their own security. And once again, thank you, Tyler Perry. Thank you, Tyler Perry. I mean, this was the biggest plot twist in royal history. But it cannot be stated enough how much this man likely saved Harry and Meghan's life.
Now I know that it was, you know, security was used as leverage. And I think what really worries me more than anything else about today's decision, depending on, you know, what happens next, is that it's set a new precedent, that security can be used to control members of the family. And effectively what it does is imprison other members of the family from being able to, you know, choose a different life.
I'm so glad he said that. I am so, so glad that he has said that. Because, you know, those Wells kids are going to grow up. Now, George, I think George is the institutions, for sure. George really doesn't, I don't think he has a choice. And that in itself is also really sad. But the other two, the Spares, because we know that they don't care about the Spares, may have a chance of getting out. If indeed just the whole institution doesn't fall apart before then. But are they going to be allowed to fly and do so freely, knowing how this institution now behaves? And they will probably come down even harder now on anyone else that wants to leave, because this isn't just about bullying Harry and his wife, it's about also sending a message to the others. Kate, you in danger, girl. This is why Sophie, Edward, all of them stay looking malnourished and eating whatever breadcrumbs they're thrown because they literally cannot leave. This is a cult that threatens you.
For me, security is conditional on having an official role, one that both myself and my wife wished to carry on, but then was rejected, not by Ravek, was rejected by the royal household. And the result to that is you lose your security. That basically says that you can't live outside of their control if you want to be safe. But it was a pretty hard decision there. And I think if you strip away all the noise of everything that's been said by other people and all the noise that's been created around this, if you strip that all away, I think what people will hear is that the only thing that I've been asking for throughout this whole process is safety, both when I was when I was part of the institution and when we left. And the important piece here, Neda, is, you know, for me and my wife, well, I mean, again, I'm not sure how much I can say, but well, I can never leave the royal family. Yeah, that is my family. That is my larger family. I left the.
I find it interesting he says that, actually, only because I always believed that Harry can abdicate. So when Harry says, "I can never leave the royal family," is he referring to the fact that they are his biological family, in which case, yes, he can never leave the royal family in that sense, or he can never, like, if he wanted to abdicate, he couldn't do that? Or does he mean it the first way I said it? I'm actually gonna look. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think Harry has any plans to abdicate. I don't even know if that would help the situation or make it worse, or if there is even a point to that. But it's something I'll look into, actually, because I just think that this whole institution is a sinking ship. I've said this from the beginning. I remember when I did say it, squaddies were screaming and yelling at me, but I just think they need to just cut these people off from every last cord. Every last cord, every last connection, just cut them off. Like, what else is there to be connected to? They are ruthless. And they're proving it again, 25 years later.
I left the institution because at the end of the day I had to. I didn't leave it in 2020. I left it in 2021. But security was removed in 2020.
Speaking of your family, your father is ill with cancer. Will you continue to visit him alone without the family? Where does this leave things moving forward, the ability of your children to see their grandfather?
You know, life is a precious thing, and I'm acutely aware of the fragility of that. I can only come to the UK safely if I'm invited. And you know, there is a lot of.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Sik said, I think he means he is at high risk of leaving the royal family because of what he knows about the institution. Harry knows a lot, yeah. And I think what he knows does haunt them, which is why you would just think that they would just end this headache today. End it yesterday, actually. I don't really want to even think about it, but I just know that Harry and Meghan have they've got some safety nets in place in terms of making sure that, God forbid, anything ever happened, the truth would come out and there would be no misunderstanding and no rewriting of history. At this point, I hope, you know, we saw in the Harry and Meghan documentary that they keep video diaries. We saw that they have internal and external cameras in their cars. Meghan sends notes to the kids, email notes, voice notes. I hope there is evidence and backups, because this is insane.
Control and ability in my father's hands. Ultimately, this whole thing could be resolved through him, not necessarily by intervening, but by stepping aside, allowing the experts to do what is necessary and to carry out an RMB. That said, this all was initiated under a previous government. There is now a new government. I have had it described to me, once people knew about the facts, that this is an good old-fashioned establishment stitch-up, and that's what it feels like.
So should Keir Starmer step in?
I think that, based on...
Okay, he goes on to talk about the Prime Minister, but before I get onto that, because this is probably the most interesting part of this interview, I just want to read this comment from Lightside. You said, "I don't think they would let him, even if he they would let them be, even if he abdicates. I think that the crime they refuse to forgive him for is to not only marry a woman of M stature, but to have that lineage now. He's a threat." Well, yeah, in their very envious, deluded minds, he's a threat. Thank you for that comment, Lightside. But all Harry and Meghan are doing are really just living their lives. And how pathetic is it that this 1,000-year-old institution that claims to be the creme de la creme of high society, how pathetic is it that they are just so threatened? If you really are so high and mighty, nothing should be shaking you. I think they've just, first of all, realized that the smear campaign to destroy Harry and Meghan, especially Meghan's image and character, it worked on the bigoted minds it was always going to work on. It worked there. It hasn't worked everywhere. And there are still enough people that support Harry and Meghan, everyday people who buy into what they do, whether it's products, charitable organizations, humanitarian work, that the smear campaign has not been effective enough to destroy them completely. And then you've also got all of the celebrities and famous friends and dignitaries in other countries who also back them, who are all looking at this, by the way. They're looking at this. The Commonwealth is looking at this. And what I find even more incredible is you would think, even if it is just for PR purposes, even if you really don't care about your own family members, the royals, the unroyals would just make this go away tomorrow. I need somebody to tell me why the unroyals are so convinced something happening to Harry and Meghan wouldn't touch them. It would be the beginning of the end, truly the beginning of the end of this institution. And this also just comes in the same week that Virginia Giuffre passed away. I don't know if I 100% believe that it was SCSI'd, but she has now departed this earth. And that came just days after Andrew was at the Easter ceremony, front and center in the church. And then Charles is now sick. If he passes, William is going to be a disaster king. You would think, if only for PR purposes, just make this all go away. Okay, let's listen to what he has to say about the Prime Minister.
So should Keir Starmer step in?
I think that, based on the judgment that the court has put out today, it clearly states that RAVEC aren't constrained by law. Again, I wish somebody had said that from the beginning. If they're not constrained by law, then this decision was made by the royal prerogative, which means that on national security matters, my case, which the other side have used national security exclusions and excuses to withhold certain information from me, restrict me from being able to speak about certain things to the public, that this national security matter is not bound by any law, and that RAVEC can abandon the very processes, the very expert processes that exist to protect individuals and the people around them, as well as the decision makers themselves, from liability if anything should happen. So,
Do you hear that? Protect themselves from liability. So if anything happens, nobody will be liable. Not the government, not the royal family, not the tabloid press, who have stoked the flames of hate from the very moment Meghan walked into that institution. And nobody on the committee, not the courts, even though they've made this decision.
Ask the Prime Minister to step in. I would ask Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, to look at this very, very carefully, and I would ask her to review RAVEC.
And you know why they're not going to? You know why the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary isn't going to do anything? Because they're not about to piss off Rupert Murdoch. That's why they're not going to do anything. Keir Starmer is not about to piss off Rupert Murdoch or Jonathan Rothmere. I will actually be very surprised if Starmer does anything about this. I'll be very surprised. It'll be the first time I believe that man has a pair.
And its members. Because if it is an expert body, then what is the royal household's role there? If it isn't to influence and decide what they want for the members of their household.
Do you want the court battle to continue? Do you want to try to see this get to the Supreme Court?
I don't want any battles to continue. There is way too much suffering and way too much conflict in the world. This, at the heart of it, is a family dispute. And it makes me really, really sad that we're sitting here today, 5 years later, where a decision that was made
let me also just say, on the issue of the government and Keir Starmer, on 2 separate occasions now, we have had other members of parliament make public their concern about the treatment of Meghan. The first time you had 72 female MPs, and then the second time you had male and female MPs from Labour, Conservative, and Liberal Democrat parties. This was the second time was after the Jeremy Clarkson debacle. So there are clearly people within Westminster who can see there's a problem here across political parties.
most likely, in fact I know, to keep us under the roof. But then once they realised that that wasn't going to work, once they realised that, myself, my wife, and our kids are happier outside of the institution, then please just look at the facts. Look at the risks, look at the threat, look at the impact that if anything was to happen to me, my wife, or my father's grandchildren, if anything was to happen to them, look where the responsibility lies. So, there's a duty of care that has been completely thrown out the window, and that doesn't feel great. Whether we agree or disagree, and there's a lot we agree on, there's a lot that we disagree on. But that aside, where is the duty of care? Because
the duty of care just isn't there, because they will just never get over the fact that Harry chose a biracial woman who comes from a black mother. And that woman gave birth to 2 children with Harry, a hereditary prince of the British monarchy. You know, a lot of people who enter interracial relationships get this wake-up call. They start to see things that they maybe never saw before or never really understood before. But here you are literally seeing the most extreme version of that on a global stage. Like, and I don't even know if Harry has even fully processed this. But you know who knew? Black women knew. We knew from the beginning. We knew from the moment we saw that Straight Out of Compton headline that this is probably where we were going to be. You know, I remember back during the early days, Sussex Squad podcast, the way Tina and Michelle would go off, like they said it how it was. They said it with a level of bravery that I'm not even brave enough to say it. I remember when, I mean, they would go off so much that I remember people would say to Tina and Michelle, oh, could you please turn it down? You know, like we shouldn't have people thinking that the Sussex Squad are like this or like that. For the people who were saying Tina and Michelle should tone it down back in the day, what do you have to say now? For the people who were saying that they were crazy for thinking or suggesting that these people want harm to come to Harry and his wife, what do you have to say now? I might have to beg Tina to come back for a podcast. Oh, let's finish this off.
That aside, where is the duty of care? Because, as I said, life is precious, and it is very clear that from 2020, because I was no longer allowed an official role, and because I decided to remove myself eventually from the institution, that my life got devalued from the highest score to the lowest score overnight.
And how does that make you feel, given you have expressed numerous times that you do not want history to repeat itself?
Yeah, I don't want history to repeat itself. I think there's a lot of other people out there, the majority, they also don't want history to repeat itself. Through the disclosure process, I've discovered that some people want history to repeat itself, which is pretty dark.
That's quite a statement. Who do you think that is?
I'm not going to share it at this point. You know, I know all the names of the people that were involved in this.
He's not going to share it at this point, but those people exist. They're there, outside of the institution, the random trolls, and in the institution. We're going to know the names of those people one day, but it's not going to be because anything has happened to Harry and Meghan. They will be exposed in their own time. I mean, it's pretty obvious who it is right now. He's just not saying it.
Why wasn't I put through the same risk management board that everybody else was put through, including members of my family?
And you reject it not because you're no longer a working royal.
Sorry?
And you reject that it has nothing to do with the fact that you're no longer a working royal.
Whether I have an official role or not is irrelevant to the security needs that I would need. Let me rephrase that. Sorry. Whether I have an official role or not is irrelevant to the threats, risks, and impact on the reputation of the UK if something was to happen. And again, that is proven by all of the examples that exist out there. So for me, having an official role was conditional on keeping security. But for everybody else, people who have chosen this life to enter into public office and then leave, get it for life, regardless of whether they have risk or threat.
And, you know, again, he mentions the reputation of the UK. when you look at the wider Commonwealth and the fact that the majority of it is people of color, and even actually the majority white countries that are currently in the Commonwealth, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, they've all spoken about breaking away from the Commonwealth, breaking away from having, you know, a UK head of state. So how is no one within the institution, within the government thinking about this? And then taking into account the international tours that Harry and Meghan have done on their own have been so well received from those countries. They were so welcomed in Nigeria. By the way, the delegation for Invictus, I'll cover this in the next podcast, went to Nigeria. The building of the Invictus Center there is, you know, going to get underway. They were so well received in Colombia. I mean, you're missing an incredible soft power here to coddle this unroyal mafia.
Get it for life, regardless of whether they have risk or threat to their name. And by the way, I agree with that. I think that is absolutely the right thing to do. That if you come in and you serve your country, even if it's a minimum of 4 years, that you get the protection that you require because of your public service. I was born into this position. It wasn't a choice. I've served my country for 35 years. I believe that I am still continuing to serve my country. Public service is my life. That is the dedication that will never change. And then all the other bits and pieces that are added to that. You know, there are very, very real threats that exist out there. Some that are known about, some that have been withheld. And for people in power and responsibility of decisions to know that those threats and risks exist, but to turn around and say, well, because you don't have an official role, your life doesn't actually matter anymore. Well, you can imagine how I feel about that, but you can also imagine, not even imagine, that is the most illogical argument in the history of arguments.
And finally, just because you mentioned, you know, your connection to your country, your public service, after this years-long battle, do you think your relationship has changed with the UK? Do you feel let down by your country?
That's a big question. At this point, I'm feeling very let down. You know, it's the minority of people, especially those that read the tabloids and the press themselves. The press themselves have incited so much hatred towards myself, my wife, and even our children. That's hard to forgive. You know, there are decisions that have been made. There are things that have happened since 2016, especially from.
Yeah, and you know, I think that Harry's being very polite there. You know, it's not a small. I don't think it's a small portion of the British public who have added fuel to the fire and who believe everything that the Rupert Murdoch, Jonathan Rothermere tabloid press tells them. I think it's actually quite a sizable chunk. It's definitely not everyone, but I don't think it's a small group of people. I think it's a sizable chunk. And then you've got all the people outside of the UK who believe it, who believe what the Jonathan Rothermere, Rupert Murdoch press tell them, but they couldn't even name those two people. They can't even name the people who control what they think and read.
Since 2016, there are things that have happened that I can now forgive. I've moved past that. I can forgive my family's involvement, my father, my brother, and my stepmother. I can forgive the press to a large extent as well for so many things that have happened. What I'm struggling to forgive, and what I will probably always struggle to forgive, is that a decision that was made in 2020 that affects my every single day, and that is knowingly putting me and my family in harm's way everybody knew that they were putting us at risk in 2020, and they hoped that me knowing that risk would force us to come back. But then when you realise that that didn't work, do you not want to just keep us safe? Whether you're the government, whether you're the royal household, whether you're my dad, my family, despite all of our differences, do you not want to just ensure our safety? And I'm calling for, the Home Secretary and the government to do a review of RAVEG. And I'm also asking for an R&B assessment that I haven't received since 2019.
Just because you spoke there about forgiveness.
I just want to respond to a comment. Somebody said, what does Rupert Murdoch have to do with this? What Rupert Murdoch has to do with this? Well, two things. Number one, Rupert Murdoch has a huge say in who becomes prime minister. And he also has because of the monopoly that his news outlets have on the British media. And he also has a huge say in what direction I won't go as far as to say what direction the prime ministership goes, but his press can make you or break you as prime minister. I've talked about this, but maybe I should actually do a whole podcast on this for those of you who don't live in the UK, who maybe aren't as aware of these things. But I think when I did a podcast on this where I went through I think it was like the amount of times that Rishi Sunak had met with Murdoch when he was prime minister. You've also now got, and I'll cover this in the next podcast, Gordon Brown is now going after Rupert Murdoch because of invasion of privacy and stuff that happened during the phone hacking scandal. He can really move the sails in your boat when you are prime minister and the public mood. And Jonathan Rothermere's Associated Press also having a lot of outlets also contribute to that as well. They're of the same mindset. Also, what Rupert Murdoch has to do with it is the fact that Harry went after Rupert Murdoch's papers. And a huge part of bullying Harry, taking away his security, bullying his wife, was to stop Harry from going ahead with the court case against Murdoch's papers, which ended in Murdoch's papers having to apologize to Harry and to Diana, and for the first time since the phone hacking scandal was exposed, actually admitting to wrongdoing. Up until now, they've just been paying people off. They've never fully admitted to wrongdoing. So that's what Rupert Murdoch has to do with it. I might actually do a whole podcast on this at some point. Lauren Brown, you said they are trying to keep him groveling when he comes to the UK. Yeah, and Harry's not having it. He is not having it at all. Caillou said nobody knows if Willie will ever see the throne. If he was wise, he would have stuck with his brother. No, William will get to the throne, but I think William will be the last king on the throne. Where we are now, do you see it going all the way up until George? Do you see it going all the way that way? I mean, I guess it depends on how and if they are able to mold George. I think that will be a huge deciding factor. But the way William is, he's out here throwing tantrums, swaying like a flag, threatening to take Harry and Meghan's titles. Oh, take them. Attempt, please. Go right ahead, William. Start all the drama for yourself while you're king. I don't know why you would want to do that, but that's just how vindictive William seems. William is going to be the most drama-fueled king we have ever seen. He has no filters, no self-control. He's just running on red-hot envy over his brother and sister-in-law. So I do believe that William will become king, but I think he will be a disastrous king. And at this point, there's just no going back. I don't think there's what reconciliation? There's no way you can trust these people at this point, Harry. No way. Now, it would actually be in their best interests to reconcile, but they won't. They're too power hungry, power crazy. William should remember that some of his ancestors, kings, went mad trying to get power. Okay, let's finish this off.
The security issue, by what you said there.
100%. Whatever noise has been created, whatever stories have been written, this has always been the sticking point. And put yourself in my shoes. If you step back to try to create a different role, the same official role, but a different working relationship with the institution that you were born into, for the sake of your wife and your own mental health and your child, which now, of course, a lot more has come out because I felt as though it needed to come out. The other side of the story needed to be told. God forbid anything should happen. And I don't regret that at all. But 2020, when that decision happened, I couldn't believe it. I actually couldn't believe it. I thought, with all the disagreements and all of the chaos that's happening, the one thing that I could rely on is my family keeping me safe. And not only did they decide to remove my security in the UK, but they also signalled to every single government around the world not to protect us.
But other governments, they're not going to be silly like that. They're not going to allow anything to happen on their soil. JK, you said the royal household should not be sitting on Ravek, period. So if they have a vendetta against someone, they wouldn't give them security. This process should be free from prejudice. Exactly. They won't give Harry security, but they had Sophie raging through the streets of London like Speedy Gonzales, knocking over and killing someone's grandma. Make it make sense.
It also signals to every single government around the world not to protect us.
How are you feeling about this decision? Because clearly you have two children, Archie, Lilibet. They're not able to see their grandfather, their uncle, their cousins in a way that you feel is safe for them. So what's your feelings kind of moving forward? Is there any way that this could be resolved?
Firstly, I'm devastated. Not so much as devastated as with the loss that I am about the people behind the decision, feeling as though this is okay. Is it a win for them? Is it a win that that I don't get the protection that the threats and risks and impact say that I should? I would hope they wouldn't consider it a win. And I'm sure there's some people out there, probably most likely the people that wish me harm, consider this a huge win. But there have been so many disagreements, differences between me and some of my family. This current situation that has been ongoing for 5 years with regard to human life and safety is the sticking point. It is the only thing that's left. Of course, some members of my family will never forgive me for writing a book. Of course, they will never forgive me for lots of things. But there is. I would love reconciliation with my family. There's no point in.
And like I said, it is actually more for their benefit than Harry and Meghan's to reconcile. The royal institution is a sinking ship. At this point, whatever way you want to put it, it's a sinking ship. And to be honest, for Harry and Meghan at this point, the further they are away from it, the better. It's the royal institution that would benefit from reconciliation. Harry just wants to have a good relationship with his family. But the problem is that that family is this institution. It's very, very messy. Because how do you separate family from institution? They're two in one. And you essentially just have a cult. You don't actually have a family. And that's just very sad.
As I said, life is precious. I don't know how much longer my father has. You know, he won't speak to me because of this security stuff.
Interesting, he says, I don't know how much longer my father has. If you're going by what the British tabloids are saying, then Charles's treatment is coming along. I mean, to be honest, they're not really saying either way. They're being very surface level about Charles's treatments. 1 minute his treatments are coming along, the next they're stopping treatments, or he's pausing treatments while he's going away, and then it's like they almost forget that he has cancer and they don't bring it up. And then the first time we hear about it for a few weeks is when Harry's coming back, and they only mention it to weaponize Charles's cancer against Harry. I believe that they are keeping a lot from us in regards to Charles's illness. I think he's actually a lot more ill than what they're telling us. And it's interesting that I just find it interesting that Harry would say it like that. I don't know how much longer, because if Charles's treatments were going fine, even with the illness, even at his age, you would think that Charles maybe still has another 5, 10, maybe even 15 years. But it's looking more and more every day like his time could be coming sooner.
He won't speak to me because of this security stuff. But it would be nice to reconcile. As I learned through the First Nations throughout Canada, because of the Invictus Games, their goal in life was always truth and reconciliation. And I turned around to them in many conversations and I said, right, but reconciliation can't come without truth. Well, I've now found out the truth. I've shared some of it with you today. A lot of it exists out there, whether people choose to ignore it or not. You know, so it would be nice to have that reconciliation part now. If they don't want that, that's entirely up to them.
And now that this court battle...
It's interesting that Harry says, talks about reconciliation, because I don't even know what that would look like. maybe you all in the comment section could tell me. I mean, what would that actually look like? They say sorry? That sorry better be a loud one and publicly. Would that reconciliation also mean public come with a public call out of Rupert Murdoch and Jonathan Rothermere, who they're in bed with? Like, what would reconciliation with his family actually look like? They can bring over the Wells as kids to Montecito and we can have play dates.
I mean, no, I don't think he would ever want to talk about it. I think he would just push it aside, and the argument will continue to be this is a government decision. It may well be a government decision.
He would push it aside, therefore also pushing his grandchildren aside. The grandchildren that the tabloid press would love to have you believe he wants to see.
It will continue to be this is a government decision. It may well be a government decision. But how did they reach that decision? You know, when the rabbit chair, the first place that they went to was the palace to understand what it is that the royal household or what the royal family want for me. I've never ever been allowed or offered to make my own representations.
And remember, they would have you believe that Diana didn't want security or refuse security. And even if Diana did refuse security, and it's looking more and more like that was a lie, would that security be able to be trusted, or would they have been spying on her? Either way, these people can't be trusted. Whether or not Diana wanted security or not from them, or refused security, but at least with what Harry's doing now, there can never be that debate, right? He could actually still appeal and go to the higher court. I don't know if he'll do that.
And the new RAVEC chair continues to avoid answering some very specific questions that I have. And one of your previous questions that I think is really important is this case-by-case basis. For me, and only me, there has to be a royal obligation in order to receive protection on UK soil. And I think that speaks volumes.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, there you have it. I really wanted to do another podcast today, but I think I will leave it for tomorrow. I am exhausted. This is exhausting. Thank you if you've stuck around. I know that Baron did a podcast. But thank you for giving me some time and space to give my 2 cents as well. Yeah, disappointing but not surprising. Thank you so much to Kevon Slim. She said, I never cared about the royal family except on 2 occasions when I was a kid and in love with Diana and when Harry met Meghan. Yeah, same for a lot of people. Thank you so much to V for the sticker. Very, very much appreciated. Also, thank you so much to the mod squad. You have been amazing. There's over 1,000 people in the chat. Hit that thumbs up button, please. You are so much appreciated. If you are new around here, you can become a member via YouTube or buy me a coffee. We do appreciate it if you become a member, if you buy me a coffee, but either way, it's appreciated. But yeah, just hitting that thumbs up button and leaving a comment after the video finishes really does help us keep this podcast going. Lauren, you said Harry should definitely release book 2. These people have no heart. They don't protect those who will not protect you. Yeah, I mean, he still has to be careful, and to Harry's credit, he has been very, very smart so far. I believe that Harry and Meghan have things in place. So that book 2 is technically written. There's, what was it, 400 pages that didn't get published in spare one. So this is really only the royal family throwing themselves under the bus. Jesus said, that's not the point. The fact that they told all the governments around the world not to protect them, that's serious. What does that tell you? Well, the other governments didn't listen to their nonsense, did they? They went to Nigeria, they were given ample protection. They went to Colombia, they were given ample protection. They went to Germany, Dusseldorf, ample protection. They went to the Netherlands, ample protection. Went to Canada, full protection. So they're not stupid. They're not playing around. They don't want those Diana headlines on their soil. No. They're not about to have that. Everybody else has sense. Harry didn't. He just went to Ukraine. A whole war zone. He had protection there. Nobody else is playing these games because they don't want to win stupid prizes. They don't want to have pictures of car crashes in their country. So when it comes to other countries, the royal household can do what it likes. Clearly, those countries aren't listening because we can see everywhere Harry and Meghan have gone, they've gotten security. Valerie, your eyes have been opened. Oh, I think it speaks for everyone there. Shocking. Benjamin, when British taxpayers get tired, they will take to the streets. Sadly, Benjamin, I think I have to disagree with you there. I think I have to disagree with you. I mean, even when Diana died, what did we have? Crying and a few scuffles with the press outside the palace. And that was very quickly tamed after Tony Blair had the sense to tell the royals to come out and make it look like you're sad. It was only after that. And that was enough to tame the people. I don't think they're going to take to the streets. And you know what? I think this is actually why they're just being so brazen. Because in the end, I think that there would be a lot of public outrage and there would be a mourning on the level of what you saw with Diana, maybe even twice as much. But in terms of actual physical pushback, legislative pushback and anger to the point of really holding the establishment accountable, do I think that would happen? No. And I think even the establishment know that. I think that's why they're being so brazen. I hate to say it. The peasants would be all out here with the tears, but will they actually like do anything that leads to any tangible change? I just don't see it happening, to be honest. I don't know what it will take. Maybe if the economic situation in the UK was so horribly bad, and then they have another king-size coronation, and then that makes people angry. I don't know. And you know what? To be honest, I don't actually want that. I don't actually want any type of political upheaval, people to be protesting, and all this stuff. A lot of this stuff can just be sorted out in a very common sense way. All of this with the security could have been prevented a long time ago by just offering Harry and Meghan security that they need from the get-go. The anger towards the money that's being spent on the royals in the middle of a cost of living crisis and inflation, that can also be dealt with in a common sense way. There's no need to be giving them that amount of money. The anger over, the whole stuff with, Charles and William being slumlords, that could also be dealt with in a common sense way. We don't actually need all this protest and upheaval. I'm not somebody that wants to encourage that at all. I want common sense solutions to these problems. But they are, by continuing this way, it's the institution that is potentially stoking the flames. But like I said, Benjamin, sorry, I rambled on a bit. I just don't think that, like, if you're thinking, oh, there's going to be just protests and rampaging through the street, I don't see it. I just don't see it. The only time I've seen it in recent, so anything close to that in recent times was the protest during the banking crisis. And actually, Keir Starmer was in power at that time, and they were throwing people in jail, and there was all of that stuff. Otherwise, I don't know. Maybe you all in the comments tell me, those of you who are from the UK, like, what's the worst the British public would do? But like I said, it never actually has to come to the worst. I'm really not for that. I am for common sense solutions, but of course, that goes against what the establishment wants. Valerie said, the truth is Charles is damn. Remember that picture? Oh, the one with the fire? When him and Camilla was on tour? Oh yeah, that picture was what do you call it? Not a vision, a premonition? Is that what you call it? Rhonda, you said I could never trust them. Once I know you're okay with my life being in jeopardy, I'm good on you. Exactly. When people show you who they are, believe them. Reconciliation for what? Jelaine, you said, please don't forget the fire in Archie's room. We haven't forgotten the fire in Archie's room. Very fishy. Benjamin, you said he doesn't see his family for who they are. I don't believe Charles is as sick as he pretends. I actually, my theory, this is just my theory, this is not me stating anything as truth, my opinion. I think that Charles is actually more sick than what they're telling us. Don't even go back for a funeral. I think at the very least, if Charles was to pass away, Harry would go back for the funeral. I don't know if Meghan would. But I don't think Harry would go for William's coronation. LNG said, I find it extraordinary that the cancer treatment is continuous since over a year ago. It just seems a long time to me. Well, I'm not a cancer expert, so I can't comment on that. Does anyone in healthcare, like how with Charles's particular illness, like is there like a general time frame? I wouldn't be able to comment on that. T has, by the way, why is no one talking about Centre Ballet and African Parks? Well, I think the African Parks thing, they tried to implicate Harry, and that just didn't work because you can't really implicate Harry in something that he wasn't directly involved in. With Centre Ballet, well, there's only 2 trustees that are currently on the board. And one of them is that Ian Rowlandson, who's linked to William, who is supposedly still owed money. I think the investigation with Centre Ballet is still going on behind closed doors, and I think it's actually a very good idea that that investigation happens. The Charity Commission does its thing. I'm sure Sophie Chanduka and whoever has been sent lawyers' letters, and I actually think it's good that we have due process for that, because then the full truth can come out. Sophie somewhere trying to figure out how she's gonna pay her bills after all her nonsense. Patricia, you said my heart breaks for Harry. He's such a good heart, even after everything they've done to him. Yeah, he hasn't let things blacken his heart, but I do think he just needs to let his family go. Just let them go. They are a lost cause. Harry's wife's jam goes more viral than William and Kate on any given day. They will never forgive Harry and Meghan for being more popular, more likable, more good looking, more relatable, more interesting, more glamorous. Jules, I agree. Harry and Meghan are going to be more beloved around the world. People can see how evil these haters are and harm they are wishing for. We will all be your family, people who care about you. Indeed. Because even if they so-called reconcile, I still believe they would try to harm his family. Exactly. Because ending the harm to his family would also mean calling out the Rupert Murdoch, Jonathan Rothermere tabloid press, who are in bed with the royals. There can be no reconciliation. Because you've got 2 issues here, the security and the royal household's relationship with the press. Yeah, reconciliation also has to come with truth. But the truth about his family is rather ugly. Maverick, he said that Harry shouldn't even go to Charles's funeral. I think Harry would. Blue Tints, we said they breached the contract by removing security and removing the home, so Harry no longer has to keep the agreements. Are you referring to the Sarandon agreement? Okay, I think I read that comment. Jules, you said there's something wrong with William. Indeed, I think there's something very wrong with William. I think he's gonna end up being a mad king. Like seeing faces in the walls and faces are talking to him. I mean, right now he's swaying around like a flag. TB, you said it looks like H giving up his entire life that he built outside of the firm and living in a shack with kids. They don't want M. It would be a sad, like, I don't know what you mean by that. Helen G, I'm convinced that Diana's security was taken away. Well, either way, whether she denied security or not, if she denied security, it was probably because these people can't be trusted. Or it could be that she was never actually offered security in the first place. One of those two. Either way, the blame lies with the institution. Yeah, the security for Harry they can't be trusted. There were Metropolitan Police officers who were caught in a WhatsApp group making RS about Meghan. Try it again. You said, read my words. The crown will end with William because the world will see how unfit and how little he contributes to his country. I mean, right now, he's showing up to football games more than doing any other work. Kai, you said, I think it's better for the Sussexes to stay away from the monarchy. They can take their titles and leave the Sussexes alone. Yeah. I mean, Harry and Meghan, they've already made a whole life outside of the UK. I know it. I don't pretend that, this might not be, this isn't all very heartbreaking for them, but it's like there's nothing to be, there's just nothing to be gained by being attached to this institution anymore. Nothing. Some things you just gotta leave them. Yeah, it's heavy information, Lightside. By the way, the podcast is technically actually finished. I'm just going through people's comments right now. So if y'all want to log out, we're just having a little bit of a hangout. I don't have the energy to do another podcast right now, so we'll just chill together for a few more minutes, and I'll get to stories that I haven't covered tomorrow. I haven't even had time to listen to the latest episode of The Confessions of a Female Founder. I'm just so glad that, Harry and Meghan, they're doing everything to make sure that their, children can be set up. Multiple sources of income, strong community looking out for them, strong connections, personal ties, business ties. By the way, after my podcast is finished, because I don't think Baron will be doing one until that will be another 5 or 6 hours. There is a space on Twitter going on right now, quite a big space actually. So if you wanted to go listen to them, you can. It says my cousin. It's labeled "My Cousin Prince Harry Court Verdict and Interview." If you want to go and jump in there, it's quite a bit. There's like over 200 people in there now actually, and it's all squaddies. Lightside is telling me to go to sleep. Who was in the last podcast? I did it at 2 a.m. and then forgot to talk about the main story. Miss Levy, book 2 is all that is going on now. We're seeing and hearing it. Yeah. Listen, that book 2, it will come out one day. Regardless. Oh yeah, and the security, I almost forgot, they got security in Jamaica too. Like these other countries, they're not playing. The Spencers must be heartbroken, but not surprised. I bet they are seething. Yeah. I mean, they showed up for Harry at that Invictus anniversary event, and you just know the royal household was seething when they saw them pictures of Harry's uncles and aunts giving him a hug and support. Thank you to Kevon Slims, who said, after William and Kate visited the Isle of Mull, they changed the name to the Isles of Dull. Yeah, I saw something about they had visited this place, but you know that I really don't. Those of you who've been following my podcast for long, I really don't cover the day-to-day happenings of the other royals. Only when it's actually relevant to talk about. So the visits they do, I generally don't cover them. Now, if we've got some Frankenphoto AI nonsense going on, that I'll cover. If William is swaying like a flag, that I'll cover. Or calling his mother paranoid. Otherwise, I just don't really know what the others are doing on a day-to-day basis. JK, you said, I wonder if they also told countries around the world not to protect Princess Diana when they took away her security. That is a very good point. I've never actually heard any reports that they did or attempted to do that. Diana did a lot of work overseas after she left after her divorce with Charles, and she did so without any trouble that I heard. And presumably she would have been given to some level of security when she was doing things in those countries. So yeah, that's not something that I've ever heard come up in regards to Diana security in other countries. But in terms of her own personal security from the royal household and UK security services, that definitely has a big question mark over it still, I feel. But interesting point. And just like Harry and Meghan, those countries were very happy to have Diana come. Official Lauren Brown, you said they need to move the Invictus Games to somewhere else. Yeah, I agree. But where is the somewhere else? Do you know what? South Korea were hoping to get the next Invictus. Could they just give it to them early? It seems like the Invictus board aren't even trying to move the Invictus Games. It seems like they're very hell-bent on having it in Birmingham. And you know what? They can still have it in Birmingham, and Harry and Meghan don't actually have to be there. Yeah, just disappoint the tabloids entirely. Unfortunately, the athletes will also be disappointed. But they don't have Harry and Meghan don't actually have to be there for Invictus to be what it is. Okay, I am now yawning, which means I need to go to sleep. Thank you, y'all. So someone said Charles will get sick again after the BBC interview. Yeah, Camilla might even get COVID. Lauren, you said, I don't think William would even invite Harry and Meghan to his coronation unless to force H to bow. I actually think he would. You know why? Because he'd need the extra press. That's why. That's why he'd have them there. Okay, folks, before I start yawning on you, or I just fall asleep entirely, and then you just hear me yawning, and then the podcast goes on for another hour with me yawning because I fell asleep, I will truly wrap it up now. Thank you, folks. As always, I'm not going to play the outro. We will catch up tomorrow because there's a lot that I need to catch up on, and I actually still want to comment on. Ciao. Thank you as always.